and how we go through the process all the way to tabulation and certification. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so most people don't realize that the ballot is prepared in our office. We create it, proof it, and send it out. And we prepare it about 60 days before an election. By state statute, military and overseas ballots are mailed 45 days before an election. Out-of-state ballots are mailed around 29 days, and the bulk ballots are mailed anywhere between 20 and 14 days before the election. And once the ballots have been mailed or dropped in an official ballot box, they're picked up by 2 election board members, whether it's at the post office or a drop box. We try to always have two board members at all times. And then once the ballots are received back in our office, we checked the voters' signatures against their voter record in our office. If the signature doesn't match, we send it off to another person to do a second check. And if we feel that that signature still doesn't match, the voter is given a letter, and they have 14 days after the election to either give us a signature that matches, or if they didn't sign their ballot, to sign their ballot envelope. And then 1 week before the election, which is established by statute, we pre-process the ballots, which entails opening the envelopes, separating the secrecy from the return envelope, and then opening the secrecy envelope, unfolding ballots, and getting them ready for the tabulation machine. And then the election results are released by 8 p.m. on election night, and about 60% of the ballots returned are on our first 8 p.m. election night report. And then we continue to process ballots until the 14th day after the election, and then we certify the election results on the 20th day.
And so at this point, and this is just a lot of information, we can either open it up if you guys have any questions about any one of those processes before we elaborate on something else. What would you like to do?
I think that would be a great way to proceed. So if anyone has a question. Hello, whoever just came in. So does anyone have a question? If you raise your hand, either virtually or in person, I will recognize you, then you can unmute yourself. All right, let's start with MJ. And then we'll
Reneé and Shelley, this is Mary Jane, and I'm wondering if you're going to get into the certification process more in detail, or if you could speak to it now. In particular, I understand that there were some issues this time around.
Hi, Mary Jane, it's Reneé. So I'm not sure of the issues in our office, but the certification process statewide, I can't speak for all the other counties, but they all are doing the same process that we are doing. So in the certification process, like Shelley said, is we have election results on election night, and then there's still processing that can happen for voter registration signatures that don't match, or someone forgot to sign. We notify them to let them know. They have 14 days after the election to come in to cure those issues. And so once that's done, we would add those ballots to the results. And we have 20 days to certify to the state our official audited results. Then once we certify, the state will have us do a automatic random hand count audit, so that we go in and we hand count whatever races and candidates measures that they've asked us to go in and hand count. Then we verify that the tabulation machines are reading and resulting the same as the hand count on the paper ballots. And then we certify those results to the state, and then the state puts those certification results on their website. So you can go into the state's website and look at all counties audit, post-election certification audit.
Just one follow-up, Renee. Then your certification was not challenged in the last election, is that right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thanks, MJ. Carol, you had a question, and then Phoebe.
Yeah, Renee, Shelley, I have a question about the provincial ballot. Why one would need one? I'm not understanding that whole process.
So basically, those are for people that come in that think they're registered or have been registered in another state, and they're given the provisional ballot until their voter registration can be verified.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like if you're working somewhere and you're not getting your mail like for months or something, that you can get a provincial ballot in the county that you're at and vote with that. Is that correct as well?
Well, that's not considered a provisional ballot. You can go to another county clerk in the state of Oregon if you're working away from them and happen not to get your ballot.
And then what we would do, this is Renee, so what we would do is that county would contact us, and then we would provide them a ballot that person's eligible to vote while they're working away from home or traveling, and they have the convenience of voting their ballot in that other county, and then that county then would mail it to us, and that's another part of the process of ballots coming in a little bit later. So they have about 8 days. Other county clerks have 8 days in Oregon to get those ballots to us, another way to accommodate voters who are out of their local area for voting.
Okay, yeah.
So you had it right. You had that right.
Thanks, Carol. Phoebe, you have a question, and I'm going to ask everybody to keep themselves muted unless you're asking a question, please.
Right, great to see you guys all again. My question, I actually have two. You can answer both or choose one. The first is, how do people find out information about this? Is it on the website? Are there public announcements around election time? And two, I'm just curious, during this process, you were talking about the time to get everything open and do the hand checks. How does your hiring work? Like, how many extra people do you hire? Do you hire extra people? And if so, how does the training go? Or what are the qualifications if someone was interested in becoming involved?
So this is Shelley. We do post current and upcoming election information on our website. And then as far as the election board members go, those are members of the community that are appointed by the county clerk. And each election just depends on how big the election and how many board members we would need.
This is Renee. Historically, back when I first started working in the elections office in 1986, Curry County was still counting ballots by hand, and we were also at the polling place. So we would employ around 300 election board workers, where we would deploy out into local areas to open up the polling place. Those are called day boards. And then we would have counting boards that would count at each polling place. And then through automation, we bypassed the punch card era because we were so small. We were still able to keep up with the hand counting process. But in 1989 is when we became too large to continue that process. So we started automating our election processes, which then we took our election boards from the day boards and the counting board and transitioned them into our election boards at the central count, the central process, and vote by mail here at the office. So we've got quite a few election board workers that have been around for quite some time, but then as they retire and move on, then we ask for folks who are interested just to give us their name, and then we keep a list of that name. And as we need more election board workers, that's how we get our election board.
Renee, sorry, there's some feedback. I don't know where it's coming from or if anybody else is hearing it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So on the election board, you said how if someone resigns or retires or leaves, how did new people become part of the election board?
We just collect a list of people that are interested, and we start calling people.
So yeah, all you have to do is if you're interested in serving on the election board, and we don't need that many now because it's all automated. Like Shelley said, depending on the side of the election, we could go from 4 election board workers to 8 election board workers. If it's an extremely large turnout, and we've had some 90% turnouts, I think our election boards at that time, we might have used 10. So yeah, so if people are interested, give us a call and we will communicate with them and bring them in as needed.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions at this point? Okay. Well, how about if we go on then, Shelley and Reneé?
So I was gonna, this is Shelley again, one thing I didn't touch on is that we do also do a lot of news releases with the newspapers and the radios, as well as on our website.
And also,
Great.
Reneé, also the Secretary of State's website has an ample supply of resources, videos. We'll use some of their videos and put on our website on current video activities that they do per election. So newspaper, radio, website, Secretary of State website, and the County Clerk's website.
Any social media?
We use our county social media, so the county does have, so yes, we do. Yes, we do that too. So I wanted to go back to voter, kind of start from the beginning on voter registration. We've come a long way on voter registration. I have to say, when I first started in elections, I was lucky enough to attend a closed conference. It was the National Association of County Clerks and Treasurers. They called that IACRIAT back in the day. And we were able to drive ourselves to San Francisco and attend that. And I remember sitting at one of the user groups, the breakout sessions, and Oregon was, I would say, a pioneer on voting by mail, voter registration by mail. And I remember sitting next to someone, I think they were from Texas, I'm not quite sure, and we were trying to explain how it works in Oregon. And he says, "You all register by what?" So voter registration by mail was, I remember that being a new thing. So voter registration has come a long way to where now you can go to DMV, you can register at DMV, you can register online, you can register still with a traditional registration card. And I have to say, Oregon does a really good job at having access, with the help of the league, of making sure that folks are registered. Also, Shelley touched over, she's not giving herself enough credit when she says the ballots are programmed here. We've had so many conversations where people will call and think that the Secretary of State's office is who prepares the ballot. The Secretary of State's office is who mails out the ballot. And so when we're dealing with, say, like a special district election, when you're dealing with all of our taxing districts, all of our taxing codes, that data, that information is held here at the county. And Shelley is responsible for making sure that every ballot style, whether what cemetery district you're in, what fire district you're in, making sure that each person is getting their accurate ballot based on that ballot split, that address that they're living in. So that is a tremendous scope of work, a tremendous responsibility. Not only does she have to make sure that the ballot styles are appropriate, she also programs the election. So the first thing she has to determine is how big is the election, as you all as a league knows, okay, what election are we dealing with, how many candidates are going to be on it, how many measures are going to be on it, so what ballot size are we going to be able to fit that and formulate that ballot information onto an 8.5 by 14, 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17, because those decisions also dictate the cost of the election, which then gets billed to the district. So Shelley is instrumental in that concept. And then for me, and for her, what's really stressful and makes us not sleep at night is we are responsible for making sure we spell everybody's names right, and every measure, every character on every ballot measure. And boy, every time we go to bed, we're waiting for that call the next morning to go, "You guys spelled my name wrong." And so we're proud to say, I don't think that's ever happened. Okay, does anybody have any questions on that?
Reneé, I have a question on voter registration information. And it has to do with I know that you can sign up, that you can register to vote at the DMV. Is it automatic?
It is
You have to
automatic.
decline it?
You
Okay,
do.
so it's an opt-out.
Correct.
Okay. But I understand, and I could be in error here, but I understand that the DMV information that you provide is not disclosed to the public, but that the voter registration information that you provide may be disclosed to the public. Is that correct?
Yeah, voter registration is public. If somebody wants a copy of your voter registration card, the signature is not public. Your driver's license and social security, if provided, is not public.
Okay. Okay. Well, that answers my question about that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, does anybody else have questions about voter registration? Carol?
Yes, what's another acceptable identification? Because if you're not a driver or you don't have a social security number.
Utility bill, another type of government type card, bank statement. A lot of people will have, you can go to DMV and kind of get an ID card, not a driver's license or a permit, but it's more of an ID card. Passport.
So a utility bill?
Mm-hmm.
With your name on it, showing that you live at that house.
Okay.
Any more questions on voter registration or ballot programming, ballot layout, ballot design?
Alice, I think you're muted.
Thank you. MJ, did you have a question?
No, I was just motioning that we couldn't hear you. You were muted.
Okay. I was trying to do my usual Zoom practice of muting myself, but maybe I will just not do that and try to keep quiet. So, okay, if there are no other questions about voter registration, did you have another topic you wanted to address?
No, I think we've gone through the ballot, the voter registration, the ballot programming, the ballot delivery, balancing audits, hand count, our tabulation. What I do want to say is on the tabulation, we get phone calls of citizens and voters worried that Oregon or we are somehow connected to the internet. And I just want to make sure that it's clear that all tabulation systems in Oregon are not hooked up to any type of internet. It's the only thing we have plugged into our tabulation system was to plug it into the wall for the electricity. And so I think where some of that confusion comes from is, as a courtesy, we all of us counties will submit our results as they come in through the night through a, so you want to talk a little bit about the process that goes through your application.
The Secretary of State has an election night reporting so that each county reports to that site so that if an individual wanted to see statewide results, they could just go to the Secretary of State's website instead of having to go to each county's website.
And so again, those are just unofficial results that we're submitting. And then once we do our official 20-day certification, then those are the official results.
Okay, Colleen.
So I have a question about the people that you have come in and do your election board. What kind of vetting process goes on for them, and how far in advance of the election do they need to be vetted? You know, can they come in the day of voting and be part of your election board?
So again, the statute requires that each county clerk appoint to the election board. So where our election boards come from are from our community, from our local folks that are here. We use, like I said, we've got a pool of folks that we have used over the years. And so we are very aware of their abilities and of their skill set. So when we look for election board workers, because now it's very technical, there needs to be some computer background, there needs to be some auditing background. So we evaluate that based on them working and making sure that they're wanting to work. They like the work that they're doing also, other than us just making sure that they are at the level that we need them to be. So it's basically an on-the-job training.
So there's no training ahead of time, like no set. Every election board needs to have A, B, C, and D training.
Oh yeah. If we're going to bring in we haven't brought in a new election board worker for a while, but if we give them training, and every process they get training. So every step along the way throughout the process during the election, there's training. Shelley will train.
Well, and for, say, signature verification, we have had training through the Department of Justice and the Oregon State Police on how to verify signatures, how to know if somebody's signature, is somebody's signed somebody else's ballot.
So yes, there's in-house training that goes on that we provide.
And how long would you say that in-house training takes? How many hours of training is it?
It's throughout all the election processes. So you could probably learn something a year later after you've been working here for a year. So it's never ending. There's always training going on.
Especially with all the new laws that come out.
Every 2 years, we got a new process. So the veteran election board workers that we've got are even going to learn something new at the next legislation cycle, because things are always changing.
Okay, any other questions at this point from the group? I actually had a question. If you could please, this is Alice, if you could please address the registration of people who are unsheltered. I understand that they can register to vote, but that there's a process involved. Could you describe that briefly?
Yeah, all citizens can register to vote no matter what their home situation is. Most people stay with, somebody, so they can register at wherever they lay their head down at night. So if they're saying they live, say, under a bridge, then we try to register them to the closest location that we can.
And also what we'll do too is if somebody's calling us and needs assistance, then we provide assistance. We send two election boards to them to help them and assist in their voter registration or balloting needs.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know.
How does it work? Earlier, you were talking about the IDs and the addresses. How does that work legally?
What is it? What's your question?
Earlier, you were talking about the forms of identification, like with an address on it, like the utility bill. How do you confirm that, or I guess how do you confirm the location?
So you're talking about how do we confirm that they are at the address that they're at?
Yeah, if they're not in a house with a house number of a location like that.
We have to by law send, it's what's called, back in the day it's called a memorandum card. Today it's called a voter notification card. And by law, it's not forwardable. So our check is sending that to them, to that address. And then if it kicks back undeliverable, if it won't go through.
But if they don't have a shelter, how are they, so they have to be able to get mail?
No, they can also come and pick up a ballot here at the office.
And then how do you determine, I'm still missing on Alice's question, how do you determine what district they are in for their ballots?
Well,
database.
yeah, and it depends on what address they're giving. If they're constantly moving, they can register at a city hall, at a courthouse.
And we have the election database. We keep the rural address system. That's what we use here in our office, which is what the county uses, the assessment uses, the roads use. And so that's the matrix that we use for all of our splits and all of our addresses and roads, making sure they're in the correct taxing districts.
So they would give an address of like a government building where they could go pick up the ballot?
They could.
Interesting, very cool. New information.
Okay, any other questions at this point? Oh, Charlie, hello. You're muted still. Oh, there you go.
Hello. I have a real good friend who served some time as a felon, and he votes in every election. I would like to know what the parameters are on that now.
You can be a convicted felon and still be registered to vote. You just can't be incarcerated in a state penitentiary and vote.
And that's how the word says something.
He says since he served his time, he's eligible. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
I got that question a lot when I was registering voters at the food bank. And so I had looked it up, and that's really important information to know. Shelley and Reneé, as I'm sure you know, the league is a partner in the National Voter Registration Day coming up on the 28th. And so voter registration information and specifics is kind of high on our list to make sure that we are appropriately registering people and that we have the information at hand. So that really helps. And then did you say that you were going to tell us a little bit about legislation that's either in the pipeline or
Yes.
already enacted that's going to affect your office?
I just wanted to say too, right now in the county, we have about 18,500 registered voters.
Oh, that's good to know.
And actually, now, so on voter registration, there are a few stats that we keep in our office on party breakdown. I'm sure the league has that too. But we've got 23.5% registered as Democrat, 31.97 as Republicans, 36.84 not affiliated. And then we've got some miscellaneous numbers on the Constitutional Party, the Independent, Libertarian, Pacific Green, Progressive, and Working Family Party. So there's just some stats for you on our voter registration breakdown by party, which is always.
That's very interesting. Colleen has a question for you.
Uh-huh.
So how closely do your election board workers track with those percentages of voters?
We have to, on our processes, we have to have our boards that represent both parties. You can't, or I should say that, we can't have our boards representing one party.
Right.
You have to have two different parties while they're doing their election processing. And we have the,
Do you have some election board people that are unaffiliated then also?
Yes.
yes.
So, oh, MJ has a question for you.
I do. If I could only remember it. Oh, yes. As we sit at the table registering voters, Reneé and Shelley, is there anybody we should not register?
U.S. citizen.
Okay, they have to be a U.S. citizen, but what if they can't? What if they have a driver's license and we can't determine if they say they are?
That they have to mark the box. They're swearing on that top box that they are
Okay.
a U.S. citizen.
And then of course,
I have trusted you in the past that if we have a question about whether somebody's already registered or maybe shouldn't be registered, we have them fill out the form, and we know that you are going to follow up with that. And that's why you send us a percent later on of the number of people that we have registered and how many, made the commitment line that they actually were able to be registered, right?
And thank you, Mary Jane, for reminding us. Make sure when you give us your registration cards after your registration drive, make sure you give me a little note to let us know that you want us to run those stats for you. So what we'll do is we'll process those individually so that we can tell you of those registration cards, how many were already registered that were just duplicates and how many were an update or something that needed to be changed. And then, or any registration cards that were invalid that we were unable at that time to register. And then, of course, we always communicate with the applicants. As long as you give us as long as there's a mailing address on those registration cards, we will communicate with them and follow through to make sure that we get something that might have been missing.
I guess I just wanted to make sure that everybody here who's going to be registering voters, don't be afraid to register somebody if you're unsure, that they will follow up and document whether they can be registered or not.
Absolutely right, Mary Jane. It's okay to have many registration cards on somebody in the office, and much rather have that than not have one submitted just because they didn't know if it was complete or not. So send everything through and do the best you can on what they're supposed to give you is the minimum. So you want to talk about the minimum that's required on a registration card?
That they're a U.S. citizen, their date of birth, name, address, and a signature.
So that's what if you look for those main components, and that helps tremendously. And like Shelley was starting to say, then what we do is we confirm with that folks first. Sorry, it's getting late in the day. It's been a long day. We confirm that they are they have a DMV,
Well, you can still register without a driver's license, a social security number. But before the next federal election, you would have to provide that information. And if you have not provided that information, you're sent a federal only ballot.
with more information that we need more information from you. So you're still voting. But when we communicate with folks, we'll have sometimes a voter will transpose their DMV license number, or they'll transpose their social security number. And so again, we're communicating with them and we're working through that to help them get it complete so they get their ballot.
Okay, Charlie has another question for you.
My husband just had to give up his driver's license, but he has an Oregon ID card. Does that count?
Well, if he's already registered, he doesn't ever have to provide that information again.
Okay.
We've already had it once. You don't have to give it to us again.
Old age is hard.
No kidding.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Carol, did you have a question?
Yes. How do you feel about, I understand there was a House bill passed that ballots can be returned all the way up to election day. So if you're mailing in a ballot, it can be mailed election day and still be counted. Is that correct?
Yeah, so a new law is coming into effect. I believe it goes into effect January. So to be next election cycles, that postmarks do count as long as you can prove that, you know, the postmark is there on election day and we receive it within a certain amount of days.
7.
I believe it's 7. We have to count that.
So you're getting ahead of, you're good for you, Carol. You're getting ahead of where we were going. So yes, on legislation bills that were passed, that was one we were going to talk about. How do you guys feel about postmarks counting on ballots?
Well, I like it, but I just wanted to know if there are pros and cons that you can think of about that.
Well, what we'll tell you about postmarks is in Curry County, we have a lot of close elections. And so what will be happening is as the results are given out and it's a close election and we're still waiting for 7 days after the election, you know, the person that went to bed thinking they were a winner may wake up the next time and not be the winner.
So that creates a problem for you.
I think it's going to be a perception issue for our voters when results change like that. When we're talking about mass changes, now remember, we're still keeping, you know, we still have to wait, you know, 20 days after the election to certify, and we're still waiting for some of those miscellaneous signatures that aren't on their envelopes and doing notifications when signatures don't match. So results do change anyway, but when you've got a mass production and a mass voting of ballots, and we'll have to wait and see, are voters going to change up their voting patterns and vote later knowing that there is a postmark that's available, and are they going to now go to the post office more often now than using our drop site? So so there are some concerns, and so we're just going to have to, again, it's the law and we're supposed to apply the law, so we'll see how it goes.
I thought it would be a little bit confusing to you guys, but as a voter, I was always like, shoot, do I have to mail it in by this day, or can I wait till the day of the election? And so it's much easier as a voter to have it available to you to mail on election day. But I certainly understand the nuances of all the stuff after that for you guys.
Yeah, for us, for administration, that's our job. So our concern is going to be, you know, the perception of the voters and how they're going to feel if that's what happens. If the majority of the voters start waiting to election day to turn in their ballot, then that's going to make results take longer, and that could push us up into that 20-day deadline. So we'll have to just see what patterns come from this.
Okay,
You
I
still
think
get to.
sorry, Carol. Go
You
ahead
still
with your
get to-
question, then I'm gonna recognize Dennis and then Colleen.
You still get to shoot, now I forgot. You still get to start your process though before election day, correct?
That's correct, but what I was referring to is if most of the voters waited to send their ballot in on election day, and then it's going to take 7 days for the ballot to get here, we wouldn't even know what ballots were out there yet after election day.
Gotcha.
Okay, Dennis has a question for you.
Thank you. Hi, Shelley and Reneé. I'm really happy about National Voter Registration Day, and we're going to be participating in 3 different cities, as you know, as we had done in previous years. My question is, can we register out-of-state voters on that day? And do they, like, if they needed to use that form that you have, the voter registration form, could they just send it to the county in which they're registered rather than to you, or how do we do that?
No, so they would have to register to vote with their state. I don't know that the other state would take an Oregon voter registration card to get them registered.
Oh, okay. I didn't know whether the voter registration cards were federal or whether they were state. So they are state specific then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Colleen, you had a question?
My first question, I think Carol answered. So if people mail in their ballot early, you can open them and see who they voted for and start that tally. Is that what we confirmed with Carol's question?
We can start opening ballots, getting them prepared to tally 7 days before the election.
Okay,
The ballot counting doesn't actually happen until election day.
so you don't, I mean, I would think that it would be like disastrous for you to be putting out any information before voting day of what those tallies are. So you just get them ready.
Yeah, we don't have those numbers, so there's nothing for us to get out early because we're not tabulating until election day.
And we can't release results until 8 p.m.
Until the polls close at 8 p.m. on election night.
Okay, and my second question was, I'm thinking we can't give out the Oregon voter registration cards, but we could tell people that they could go on to vote411.org right? And pick their own state, and then that would register them in their actual state?
That's a 411 question. If you have the, yes, you definitely, I would, if I were you and registering somebody that isn't an Oregonian, yes, direct them to any resource that gets them their registration card so they can get registered.
So they could do it online. Okay,
If that's, yeah, whatever processes those states use. We've got enough processes to keep track of for Oregon. I don't know exactly all the processes and how those registration laws work in other states.
Okay, thanks. Susan Barkey, you had a question?
Yes, kind of a follow-up on Dennis. Dennis had asked if we could give them to out-of-state people, but we can give them to people in Oregon, correct? And they can take it to their own county?
Yes, you can use a registration card for any county in Oregon.
And even if you happen to send us another county's voter registration card, we would mail that to the other county.
Oh, great.
That happens now.
That actually,
And
okay, and that actually brought up a question for me. This is Alice again. That as I understand it, the volunteers who participate in National Voter Registration Day are not allowed to actually mail the registration cards for the registering voter. Is that correct?
I think
We collect them.
You're on your registrar rules, you're supposed to get those registration cards to us within 5 days of the day you received them in. So don't put them in the mail because the mail could take longer than 5 days.
Okay, yeah, my understanding was that we were supposed to deliver them to your office within 48 hours. Is that correct?
Oh, you know what? I said 5 days rolled off my tongue like I know that to be. So we'll double check on that and get that back to you, Alice.
Okay, because I do know that's been our practice, and I know that that's the case for ballots. If somebody else is submitting it, it has to be received within 48 hours. So, and then I had another question. You said that there are 18,500 registered voters in Curry County. Is that correct?
That's a guesstimate. There's about
Yeah. Ian did this one for me, so 19,138. So I'll have to confirm on that one. Shelley's giving you her last audited report of 18,000.
500-ish. So it's not an exact number. I'd have to run a new report to be
Yeah.
exact number.
And we can
Is
run
that? Yeah, the exact number isn't really what I'm after. I'm just thinking, I thought our county had a population of around 22 or 23,000.
Yes, that's what the census keeps saying, 22, 23,000, but our voter registration, and I know we have an elderly county, and I know that, the numbers, I've always said, wow, we've got 22,000, 23,000 people living here and 18,000 unregistered voters.
Yeah, I just thought that seemed exceptionally high. I don't know how we compare to other counties, and maybe you don't either, but I don't know if I should worry or celebrate.
Those numbers that we're talking about are coming from a census report.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions at this point? Did you have more legislation to talk about?
I did. I had a couple of more bills just a few that I wanted to just point out of note. It is House Bill 2312. It is prohibits knowingly communicating false materials as it relates to elections, election deadline, voter registration. But House Bill 2323 also prohibits false information regarding candidates, political committees, and measures. So those are two, I think, House bills that might help with the misinformation campaigns that go out and about. So hopefully we'll see some movement on that. And folks, when they're reporting stuff, will make sure they're reporting their county or their state's rules and not get confused with another state's rules or another county's process. So those two I really like. And then Shelley talked, or somebody brought up already, I think it was Carol, the postmark bill. And I think those were the main House bills that I wanted to let you guys know. One, House Bill 2681, it's changing the September date back to an August date. And
So,
then
Reneé, just to clarify, those are Oregon House bills?
yes,
Or are you talking about in the federal?
that's Oregon. Those are House bills, Oregon House bills that have passed, and I believe most of them go into effect in January. And then one that did not pass was the Super Tuesday bill that would change the presidential primary to March. That did not pass. But I'm sure they'll come back again. And then in closing, what I want to talk a little bit about, just an update on the security measures that the Secretary of State uses on the voter registration system. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Albert Network Security Monitoring Service through Homeland Security. And I think all counties now? I believe all counties are hooked into that security process where counties can be notified by Homeland Security within 6 minutes of anyone trying to, any detection of any malicious activities on their network. And we work, the Secretary of State's office is the one that administers that and monitors that. So I just wanted to let you all know some of the security measures that are taking place in Oregon for our voter registration system.
Have you seen security getting a higher profile in recent years compared to what it used to be?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The Secretary of State's IT department, Homeland Security, Facebook, they're all working together to provide secure access and information that's out there.
That's terrific. As we wrap up, does anybody else have a question for our two knowledgeable clerks here? Both certified, by the way. How about a final question? I don't know if this is probably not a fair question, but do either or both of you have a favorite story about elections out of the clerk's office that you can actually tell?
Oh gosh, I think there's always a favorite story. There's always something. We just try to, when you're dealing with mass production like we are, you always have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And so every election, oh my goodness. So Shelley, is there any, I mean, I'm just smiling right now. If you could see my face, you would know that there's a few stories. I think we had a tree fall down back in Agnes when we had to go we had to collect ballots up in Agnes, and we had, of course, November. We always cross our fingers on our wonderful storms, and a tree came across the road, and so we couldn't get to the ballots. They couldn't get to us, and of course we were late, and so of course that was front page news. Late results coming in for the elections office. So that's one of mine that comes off the top of my head.
That's a great one, Reneé.
So
I would just think, with your background of so long at the clerk's office, but I know there's probably some stories that can never be told.
Well,
too,
and I do have a story. So this had to do with one of our 8 p.m. pickups, and of course it's the last pickup of the night, and we sent our 2 election board members to Port Orford. And about
what you tell this story?
8:05, I get a phone call from them saying we locked our keys in the car. And so we had to call a tow truck to get the keys out of the car. And luckily, David Brock Smith volunteered to go give these election board blankets and waited with them for the tow truck.
That's a great story.
It was a great question. Thank you. That smiles on our face.
Well, good. Well, we're 5 minutes early. Anything? Oh, Colleen's got a question. I hate to let you guys go when we have all this brain power in one place.
You'll be seeing us on
Colleen.
National Voter Registration Day. It's been a tradition from our office that we stop by your wonderful volunteers who are working the tables in Port Orford, Brookings, and Gold Beach. So you'll have another opportunity to pick our brains. So write down your questions. We'll be happy to talk with you.
We loved seeing you last year.
Thank
Colleen.
you.
So my question is, one time last year that I believe it was California, there was a voter drop box that actually someone put fire something into, so all the ballots inside the drop box were burned. What do you do to prevent that type of malicious activity? And if obviously something like that happens, then what do you do to figure out whose ballots were in that box and figure out how to make sure that their vote is still counted?
That's happened in other counties before. Luckily, it hasn't happened to us. And so they do have processes where they try to communicate with the folks that dropped off their ballots on that day. It's a huge task. It's a huge lift. They have to communicate with the community and give them an opportunity, if they drop their ballot off at that day, because ballots are picked up daily, that they will be able to get that opportunity for them to vote again. And then for fire suppression, so you want to talk about?
We do have fire suppression in our ballot boxes.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
thank you both so much for your time. And if you have any closing remarks besides plan for the worst and hope for the best, I can't imagine. That sounds like a good watchword for all of us, I think.
I have to say, I worked up a sweat. You guys had you all had good questions, and I appreciate them. Like I said, at the end of the day, we're a little tired. We've had a big day. I hope we've served you justice on this one, and I hope that you got some information from us that you may not have known, and I hope that, again, that you have confidence in what we do here.
We absolutely do. And thank you all. If you could all unmute, and we'll give a big round of applause.
Bravo! Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleen, would you like to take a screenshot before everybody leaves?
I would.
Can you?
I think everybody.
Yeah, even though our speakers are name only, but.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Let me post it like on a Word document while you guys talk, and I'll look at it and make sure it looks good.
Okay. And thank you all for coming. I hope you found it an hour well spent. So, and I will see, I'll see some of you on voter registration day. And it's just great to see you all in person. Okay, are we beautiful enough for you, Colleen?
My computer's a little slow, so we'll hope it is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay, have a good night, everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Mary, so glad you came.
Thank you so much. It was very good, very informative.
Good, good, good. Okay, are we done, Colleen?
Okay, hold on. So very smiling faces, but once again, Phoebe left before we got the picture.
I know. She had to go. She had told me that before. She had another meeting, and I don't know, Reneé and Shelley, if you could see the chat, but she was very grateful for your participation here. So yeah.